part 2 of the Hyperledger Career Fair, and we're going to have a great time today. And we're going to cover what we talked about in the last career fair, just from an overview. Then we're going to have a great panel discussion and talk about recruitment that's taking place in the Hyperledger and blockchain space right now. And then we're going to have breakout rooms, which are going to be our virtual tables for the career fair. So it's really going to be an exciting event, and glad that everyone can join us this morning. So I'm John Carpenter, and I run the Denver meetup for Hyperledger, and I collaborate with Jim Mason, who runs the Boston meetup around this career fair. And we've been doing this for a number of years. It's always been successful, and I think that this year will be no exception. So thanks for joining us here. And we'll kind of go through a little bit of Hyperledger, and let's start off with, let me get over here. Here's the antitrust policy that I want you to take a look at for a second, just so you see that we always comply with this for any meeting. Next thing is we always have a code of conduct as well. So when we're having a career fair like this or any other Hyperledger session, here's the code of conduct that we follow. And we're going to go ahead and send out the documentation from this career fair to everyone who's joining us today. So David will be following up with an email, and it'll contain the presentation that we're doing. So let's just kind of go through it here. We're going to kick off, and we're going to do a short recap of session 1 that was managed by Jim Mason. And then we're going to look at the panel discussion and, kind of talk about, what the recruitment process looks like, and I have some questions that we're going to go through with the panelists. And then at about 9:45 this morning, then we're going to cut over to going to the breakout rooms. And everyone should be able to join each of the virtual tables to go ahead and talk with people that are recruiting from the companies that have joined us today. And so that'll be a good, experience for you to get in front of them directly and go through and have a conversation. Okay, and then last time we talked a lot about the resources that are available from Hyperledger. And I can tell you that if you, look at the slide deck that we're going to send out or view any of these links here, you'll see that there's a ton of great projects that Hyperledger has that are going on at any given time. There's always the GitHub repos that are available. One thing that we covered on the last session, which I think is critical to anyone who really wants to engage with the community, is to go to the Discord channel. And I would highly suggest everyone sign up for that right away. And you can see that link. Let me just go back up here. I'll drop one down. And then the other thing to do is also they create a great weekly newsletter of all the new events and happenings in the Hyperledger community. And I would highly suggest that you sign up for that developer newsletter. And that's the link down toward the bottom here. And then there's these great training resources. And as we covered in the last session, whether you're a seasoned developer, new to Hyperledger or the blockchain space, there's always opportunities for everyone. And it's a function of just like any other type of company. There's going to be marketing functions, there's going to be HR functions, there's going to be project management functions. So, there's a lot going on. But these training resources, if you're really into doing development on a Hyperledger blockchain like Fabric or Aries, you'll want to go in and take a look at some of those resources. And then, of course, the wiki is always a great resource for you to get interaction with the community as well. So if you look at that, there's the community calendar, and that gives you a good overview of all the upcoming events for Hyperledger. And one of the best ways to engage with the community is just like what you're doing here, is jump onto one of these meetup style Zoom meetings, and then you can interact with people who are doing the core development, maintainers, and contributors in the Hyperledger community. And you can always sign up for these meetups very easily, and it's through meetup.com. and you can see the link here on the screen. So please go out to that and check out the meetup. And also a good thing that's always maintained, and we're doing this for this session, is we're keeping a record of it on a YouTube channel. And so the Hyperledger YouTube channel is updated with a lot of great videos, and they cover a very wide range of topics. And it's always a great place to start if you really want to see what the community is about. And they're all going to be referenced by the type of topic that's covered on the YouTube video. And then if you really want to get into case studies and learn about other companies beyond the people that are recruiting at this event, you can look at these case studies for people that are actively developing in Hyperledger and what types of projects that they've implemented. So I think that's really another great resource for you to go to, and that's going to be in the deck that we're going to share with everyone. Okay, and so let's talk about a couple of job search pointers at this point. And what I feel like here is I'd like everyone who's already kind of posted about their location in the chat, if you would go ahead and share your LinkedIn profile and email in the Zoom chat, I will compile that and then share that with anyone who is attending this from a company perspective. So we can go ahead and just have that going. I really appreciate it. Let's just see if I'm gonna look at the chat really quick here. See if we got some of that coming through. Yep, like Amal already has posted in. And there's another one. Yeah, great. So thanks for going ahead and posting that information in the chat, because then I can capture it and pass it along. And then, of course, you can always follow up with the companies that are recruiting here directly and provide them with your contact information in the way that they want to receive it. But here's some pointers that I want to cover, and I think these are important to when we get into the actual recruitment process, so that you know how you want to present yourself to any type of job recruiter. So number one is be mindful of your online presence and personal brand. So that is when you go out to post about things in your personal brand, make sure that everything is supporting your business philosophy, and making sure that you're not having some posts that you might regret when a job recruiter goes to check it out. And also make sure that if you're engaged in a community, you post about that community. So if you've done work as a developer, you might want to go ahead and post onto your LinkedIn or your social media channels and say, I've done this code development, I posted in GitHub, just so that it's out there that you've done development or other work in the community that's ready to see. Okay. When you go into the process of submitting your resume, make sure that you tailor your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile to the type of job that you want to acquire. And so make sure that when you're writing your cover letter, it speaks directly to the company and talks about the job that you're applying for. The last thing you want to do is have
Don't worry. We'll start afresh to fresh mind now.
Okay, we're going to do that, and make sure that when you send it out, it's completely relevant to the company that you're recruiting for. And then also make sure that your LinkedIn profile has all the skills that you have, as well as your job history. And then your resume also coordinates with your cover letter, so that they can see the skills that you have, including any certifications. And Hyperledger has a lot of training that we talked about, and if you have any Hyperledger certifications, then definitely put those in the mix. Okay, and then you should also make sure that when you're recruiting for any one of these companies, that you want to research the company and its culture. And so make sure when you go in to talk to any company, including the ones that have attended today, that you are mindful that you want to understand what the company is all about. If you go into a company and don't understand their culture, don't understand what they produce and who they sell to, then you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage for other candidates that are going to be fully versed in what the company is all about, what the company culture is all about, and who they sell to, what's their product line like, what's their software stack like, and be prepared. Okay, next one is be pleasant to everyone you encounter in your search. And that is, from the first person that you greet from an outreach on HR or through email, through the end person that you had the final interview with. You want to be pleasant and attentive and really come across as a good team player for the organization. Next thing you want to do is make sure you apply for multiple jobs if there's multiple jobs that are a good fit. And I would say here, the caveat is don't just apply for multiple jobs because they may have 10 jobs listed, but if you see 2 or 3 of those jobs that are relevant to your background and skill set, then you might want to say, okay, I'm open to not only this job, but these other 2 jobs that may be posted by the company as available. And then always follow up based on the recruitment. So when you have any feedback from the company, make sure that you have good quality and timely feedback to any response. So if they send you and say, okay, we'll be back in touch within the next 2 weeks, and we're interviewing other candidates now, make sure you say, okay, great, I'll be available in 2 weeks, and just let me know when you're ready to bring me in for a follow-up interview. So definitely follow-up is the key, and good quality follow-up and timely follow-up. Okay, and then the other thing that Jim went through, which was great on the last session, was keep track of the jobs that you apply to. So what you want to do is you want to have a record of saying, on this date, I applied to this company, and here's the job that I applied for. Maybe just have a, Google Doc or a spreadsheet that keeps track of, all this information like Jim showed us on the last session. And that way, you can also have a date. And let's say that you applied for something on, let's just say May 1st. Now we're at May 16th and you haven't heard anything back. Now might be a good time to do a follow-up email and just make sure they've received all of your resume, cover letter, and other information you submitted. And then a lot of times, companies may have a portal whereby they want you to submit this information. And they'll say, okay, enter our career portal. Here's your resume and cover letter. And then they'll send you probably a follow-up email within, a short time after you submit that. It says we received your application submission and here's a reference. Okay, and then the other thing that you should look at is, as we talked about with Jim, is there's a lot of job-related keywords that you need to understand. So when you go into an interview with a company that's engaged in blockchain, Jim had a nice dictionary of terms. And so if you have the presentation from the last meeting, you'll see that. And you'll be able to take those keywords and understand, blockchain definitions around the industry. And when you go into an interview and they talk about, recruiting for a blockchain job, you're going to be well versed in distributed ledger technology. And then the other thing that you should do, which is always critical, is if you want to get into a certain industry, make sure you're networking with the industry participants. And that's why I gave you those resources around Discord and around attending the meetups, is that when you show up to these sessions, including a session like this one, you're going to interface with the people that are active in the industry. And especially when you're doing a Hyperledger one, it's going to be people that are active in the Hyperledger industry for enterprise blockchain. So always look to continue to build your network. And when you do so, make sure that you come across as professional. And when you're asking questions, having that background with the job keywords and understanding, do some homework and understand the definitions around blockchain and how it's used in an enterprise is going to put you well ahead on your path to being able to get a job within the industry. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cut over to the second part of our session. And this is before we go ahead and get into the actual virtual recruitment tables. And what I'd like to do at this point is just kind of survey. I think we have Madison, who's going to join us in lieu of Alex. And then we have Francis, I know who's on this call. And Hitesh, are you on this call? Can you just come off mute and confirm you're here? I see Madison. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and start with Francis. And then if Hitesh joins, we'll bring him into the mix. And then we're also going to have Madison. And then Jim, since Hitesh is not on, would you mind joining the panel discussion since you're available?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, great. I'd appreciate that. That way we have just a good rounded discussion today. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little quick intro. And Francis, I'm going to start with you on the quick intro. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your background, your experience, and then your role within the company that you're going to be recruiting for today.
Great. So thank you everyone for joining. It's really exciting to see the number of people on the call and your interest in this space. So that's wonderful, especially as a lot of what Indicio, my company, is doing is very new. And so we're really excited to see a lot of people interested in it. My background, I have worked across nonprofits, tech startups, and big tech companies. So I really started my work in technology at an incubator where I worked probably for, I don't know, 20 to 30 different startups, helping them evaluate if they had a viable place in the market, if they had a viable product, and then deciding who we would invest in. And that was a lot of fun. And from there, I went to help co-found an agency. My focus then narrowed into search technology, so paid search, organic search, SEO, SEM, all of that good stuff. Then I went to work for Microsoft, still in that same space, on Bing and Microsoft advertising, and then to Amazon, and then co-founded Indicio. So I've done everything from the tiniest little one-person company to two of the biggest companies in the world. So I definitely encourage people to try different types of organizations so that you can find where do you thrive most, where do you do your best work. It really helped me in my career to know which direction I wanted to invest in and go through. My role has shifted a bit. When you found a company, basically you wear every hat, right? You're doing everything. So I built the webpage, and then I wrote our values, and then our first marketing and sales materials, all within the first 2 weeks of founding the company. And as we grew, we really found that we needed a position that was focused obviously on our people. We needed to hire. And we also needed focus on how do you build a culture within a company, and how do you do that early in a startup stage, and how do you build internal operations. So because our CEO was really on the focused on sales and investor relationships, I took up that role. So I do all of sort of the traditional people work, human resources work, but I also build our communities. So we have communities in the blockchain area. We run a network that's built on Hyperledger Aries, and we run a decentralized ledger and network. So I manage that whole community and that work as well.
Perfect. Yeah, Francis, it sounds like you have a wonderful career there, and you can really relate to a lot of different people coming in to be recruited. And I think that's really valuable when you're dealing with any type of HR that's had that broad experience. So great. Perfect. Okay, let's shift over to Madison. Madison, you want to kind of just give us a little background on yourself and then also talk about your role within your company as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, John. I thought the job pointers, the joining the meetups, the Discords was extremely helpful, and definitely a tip I give to people that I'm recruiting within the space. I, being the head of talent here at Kaleido, definitely in those channels looking for people. So great tip there. My background, like John was saying, I'm Madison, and I lead up recruiting our talent team here at Kaleido. My background is in a lot of tech startups. I was one of our first HR people here at Kaleido, and I've kind of helped grow up the team here. We've now opened up 2 offices, so got 2 headquarters out of the UK, and then here in the US, as well as a few remote employees across the globe. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the panel discussion, and I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, and that's wonderful, Madison. It's great to hear, your international footprint, and then you also have, some remote work opportunities, because what I like about this session is we have people from around the world. And, sometimes you can see with a lot of this, remote work, that whether you're in India, Brazil, I'm just looking at what's the locations here. I saw Cambridge, I think, was one of them. It's just that there's available opportunities wherever you are. So that's
Yeah,
good.
definitely. We brought on some new employees here in Brazil in the past 6 months, Hong Kong, Japan, New York. So definitely a very global group on our remote side.
Perfect. I think that's a lot of times, the current state of the tech sector, and even with a lot of blockchain companies that are tied into Hyperledger is, there's a wealth of opportunity regardless of what country that you may reside in. So there you go. Perfect. Okay, great. Let's touch base with Jim here. Jim, you've been so great in the community, and why don't you just talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on? And I know that you've also been exposed to, recruitment yourself and what you've seen in the industry. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your background and then what you're seeing in the industry as far as recruitment.
So, sure. Thanks, John. So my background, I've been with the Hyperledger organization in one way or another since 2017, originally focused on documentation for Hyperledger Fabric, and have, as certainly with John, have volunteered in a lot of different roles. I'm the leader of the Hyperledger Public Sector Group, and I'm also the Hyperledger Boston meetup organizer as well. So work with John and David Boswell and a lot of other people in that role on scheduling meetings and events and so on. That said, outside of that, I started my career at IBM as a systems engineer, focused on building a manufacturing consulting practice that worked fine, evolved into a bunch of CIO roles, and then I actually became a product manager for technology. So I got to build an IBM distributed data services product that was pretty interesting as I'll call it a learning exercise. But from there, everything sort of evolved forward. We're in the cloud space and all that. And for the last 7 years, I've worked primarily as a product manager, I'll say, and an architect. So I've been a data architect, for an Apple customer care data lake with AI, and we didn't use blockchain in that one, but we certainly had I'll call it big data challenges. But most of the work has been for 7 years has been in the blockchain space. So I worked on a used car marketplace, Web3 trading marketplace with DMX, and then after that worked with Paramount Software Solutions to build 2 Web3 trading marketplaces using Hyperledger Fabric blockchain. One was for peer-to-peer energy trading, another one was for retail carbon credits that you could buy and sell on the marketplace. And then I worked with the state of Rhode Island on using Hyperledger technologies, Indy, Aries, and Ursa, along with some open source solutions to build an identity management MVP for the state of Rhode Island. And then following that, worked with DTCC, which is the company that does all of the security settlements, like 2/3 of the world's security settlements settle through DTCC today. So I worked as a DLT architect with them. And finally with Sybil, on what we call automated digital proof of governance as a service that works for, I'll call it operational and even AI use cases as well. So that's sort of my overview. And have worked, I'm not working as a hiring manager today. I'm a consultant, but the reverse of it is I have been in the hiring manager role for other companies as well. So thanks, John.
Yeah, no, great overview. And Jim, I think that you're a wealth of information about, real world projects in the blockchain space. And, I think when we talk about skills and what's required to be recruited, I think you'd be a perfect person to talk about that as well. Okay, let's just see if Hitesh has been able to join the call. And Hitesh, if you have, please come off mute. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the regular Q&A that we're going to go through today for the discussion. Okay, so
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
go.
don't see Hitesh there yet. He's not here yet.
No problem, Jim. And if you see him pop in, we can definitely bring him up to speed. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to Francis, and I'm going to say, what is your demand in your organization for blockchain-related skills and roles? And then also, and you talked about Aries as your core development project. What types of projects might they expect to encounter at your company?
So some of the roles within Indicio would be maintaining our Indicio network. So we have a test net, a demo net, and a main net. So we have 3 different networks. It's free to use the test net and demo net as part of our public benefit offering for the community. So we are, rather than an LLC or an Inc., we're actually registered as a public benefit corporation, which means that the first stakeholders that we look at are the community and the health of the community. And then sort of from there up would be employees and investors and clients and customers. So we're very focused on community. The network is currently focused on Aries and Akapai, but we do research and projects and other development on some of the other Hyperledger ledgers and coding as well. And we're always looking at what is the next set of technology that's going to come out, what is the next standard use, things like that. So people who already have experience in those areas or know, I know that there's not a lot of people with experience in those areas because a lot of this is quite new, but people who have passion around it and interest around it is just as important for us. As a small company, what's most important to me when I'm hiring is, are you going to fit in with our culture? Are you going to thrive here in the work parameters that we have? So for example, we're a fully remote company. Will you thrive in that kind of environment? We're a startup, so it's a different way of working than when you're in a corporation that has many more policies and structures and things like that to help support employees. So the first thing I do is look at, will you fit in? The second thing I look at is, do you have passion around these technologies? Even if it's maybe you only have 6 months playing in there and doing the coding around it, or getting your hands dirty, to me that length of time is not as important. But the passion and the ability to prove that you can learn quickly and make impact quickly is far more important to me. The demand that we have, we also have 2 types of recruiting that we do. We have an associates program and we have full-time employees. So our associates program is a great way to kick off your career, to get into this space, to get experience at a startup before you might go on and work at other types of business organizations or structures. So we, at our associates program, it's generally for people earlier in their career, just out of, your schooling, whether that's a boot camp or a college or a university. We don't really care which it is. And
Good.
we then look at how do we support you, give you training, do personal and professional development, get you a mentor, all of those things that you need to really kick off your career quite well. And then we throw you into the deep end in the work. This is not an internship program where you'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you might help over here. You will be, up to your elbows in the work and getting that real life experience. So our associate roles are technically sort of a part-time role. It's an hourly paid role, and it's just a great way of getting your foot in the door. And then our whole purpose of the program is then to graduate you from an associate position into a full-time position. So I would say that there are different demands that we have, but certainly looking in our case, we don't use blockchain for tokens or cryptocurrency or things like that. We're very much focused on building decentralized products across a decentralized ledger. So if you're interested in that type of work, that's what we recruit for.
Perfect. Yeah, I think really, Francis, there's a wealth of opportunity with your company. I love the multi-stage type of recruitment. That's very innovative and really helpful to people, especially on this session where, they may not have the hard skills, but they have the soft skills that you talked about earlier in the discussion there, that, they have that passion, they have the ability to work remote and, get into this associate role and then graduate. So wonderful career path trajectory that you offer. And I think that's a perfect fit for the group that's joined today for sure. So thanks for that, Francis. Absolutely. Okay, Madison, I'm going to go over to you now and talk about, the demand within your organization for blockchain related skills and roles, and then also talk about, what type of project they might encounter.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of kind of maybe duplicate information in our roles that cross over with a lot of the stuff that Francis was saying. So really interesting. We also are not really big in the cryptocurrency space. We are building, blockchain solutions, blockchain-based apps. We're a Web3 platform, so we make it easy for businesses to build blockchain-based applications. So more enterprise focus for sure. And then in addition to that, we have our digital asset platform, which is another key piece to what Kaleido works on and does. So definitely a throw in the deep end situation for all of our roles here, but more important is the cultural fit to our team. And I think that's very relevant and seen through our recruiting process. It's like 50% of like someone's culture fit and 50% of your skill set. And we train people on, the blockchain aspect of the role for the most part. So there's a high demand for blockchain related skills and roles, though, to circle back to the question. You'll get to work on a lot of diverse projects. We are heavily involved in the Hyperledger community, especially Hyperledger Firefly. I'm not sure if many people on the call have heard of Hyperledger Firefly, but it's kind of like the first open source supernode. It's a complete stack for businesses to build and scale blockchain-based apps. It kind of solves a layer of complexity that sits between the blockchain, business processes, user interfaces. So we're definitely looking for people to join and, help maintain that and be a part of the Hyperledger community, as well as contribute to the Kaleido product as a whole, products. Yeah, so that's kind of, what our demand is, what types of projects you'd be working on and expect to encounter in a role here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, I know that's a very valuable project within the Hyperledger community, and it ties into, really the cryptocurrency side of the equation as well. So if anyone's interested in that type of opportunity. And then also, I think, Francis covered kind of this next question here, and then I'll shift over to Jim. But I want to ask you, do you have a similar type of associate and then full-time role as Francis was talking about, Madison, or how do you define these blockchain roles and opportunities within the company?
Yeah, so we do have mostly full-time roles right now. We have done some contractor roles in the past that we would be, open to, but for the most part right now, our roles are full-time, and just because we are a smaller team, almost a 50-person company at this point. So we do hope to kind of transition to maybe that associate role into full-time at some point, but we do have part-time opportunities that maybe aren't as well, defined on our website, but I would be happy to share more maybe in our breakout sessions a little later about what this would look like.
Great. Yeah, and I think that's wonderful, Madison. And I think the one thing I want to do is, because we have such a broad location group here and a broad skill set group, I just want to make sure that everyone feels like, there's some type of opportunity out there that would be relevant to them in space, regardless of where they are in their career projection. Or,
Yeah,
career.
definitely.
Okay, good. And then, Jim, I'm going to jump over to you in a little bit and just talk about, what you've seen from being active in the industry around, what types of roles that companies are offering. I know you work for DTCC,
Yep.
which is a very mature company, and, what I'll say, state-run organizations as well. So maybe talk about kind of what opportunities you see in other companies beyond, what we're talking about here.
So I'll just follow up with what was said earlier, that it's basically, if you look at where I'll say DLT, distributed ledger technology, or blockchain is important, it's really driven by these use cases. And the use cases either can come from enterprises or even communities. So what we're seeing, not just enterprises, you maybe have, somebody like Fidelity or JP Morgan or somebody, or Walmart, using blockchain internally for their own systems, which happens plenty of times. But you also have very frequently, I'll call it, large initiatives that are ongoing for a long term, where blockchain is a key part of the whole thing. And so I'll point to some things that I was involved with DTCC as we were I'll call it, a party to some very big projects. So Swift has a long-term, large-scale project trying to figure out central bank digital currencies and digital money and all of that. And they were looking at all kinds of ways to connect what I call financial communities through the network. And actually, I apologize for me giving a commercial for Kaleido, but Kaleido was a big partner on the technology side for a lot of what Swift did. And then when I slide over and look in the US, I see that there's something called RLN, the Regulated Liability Network, with Citibank and Deloitte and a bunch of other companies, and DTCC, again, partner over there. A lot of companies involved in that. They have something called the Regulated Settlement Network now, where they're trying to do automated digital payments and settlement and so on. And all of these are what I call journeys, long roadmaps of evolution in the digital technology space. And on the evolution, I hate to say it, all right, I apologize. I'm badly biased. It's kind of like if you look at the sports world, you'd say, what's your favorite sports team? Which ones don't you like? And I have that same problem when I slide over to the technology world. So in the technology world, Jim's bad biases include things like enterprise open source architectures that I think have a lot more mileage than most of the time than what I call the commercial proprietary offerings. And the example is, at Fidelity, I owned the entire Microsoft stack. I owned all of the infrastructure, architecture, and services, security, everything else, and all of the integrations to all the external environments, inbound, outbound feeds, everything else, everything we did, including cloud integration. So that was I'll call it, a broad set of responsibilities. But in that, I found that I had most of the problems with what I call the commercial products, either because they didn't have a wide enough usage base, or they had support challenges on that side. When I went to something like enterprise open source, whether it was Java technology or anything else, a lot of what you see in Hyperledger, you have a more community-based, I'll call it, platform, and you get better input and use cases. And again, apologies on my end for the Kaleido advertisement, but I'm really a fan of the Firefly network that Madison mentioned earlier. So the trick with that is that and this is just me looking at quickly at the Hyperledger projects, there's many projects, good labs for what I call upcoming technologies as well, not just the projects that we work in. But the ones that I see that have been most widely used are certainly Hyperledger Fabric is in wide use across the world in many use cases, as I used to be part of the team that tracked that stuff. But then on top of that, now we see that Hyperledger Besu is a framework to provide, I'll call it a secure permissioned layer on top of Ethereum compatible networks. So Ethereum is basically just I'll call it a public blockchain network that is really well architected from a standards perspective. And a lot of, I'll call it technologies and blockchains have built off of what I'll call being EVM compatible. So that if you build something for one network, if it's EVM compatible, the idea that you can run those contracts or dApps or whatever on other networks is a reasonable thing to do. It's not an impossible transformation. And certainly, I actually had done some of the work in some of the labs that Kaleido had on testing out Firefly on top of the Besu client to go to Polygon, an EVM compatible network. So that actually worked out pretty well. And so to be fair, their training is and their tutorials were actually pretty helpful with that. So that was nice. But again, summarizing at a higher level, I'll say to me, it's supply chain, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, and public sector, where I also have a focus as well. All of those are having a higher, not lower, dependency on something called trusted data. And so Mohan Venkataraman from Chainyard did a great presentation at Public Sector Group on why you want to have, he called it enterprise trusted AI and machine learning solutions. And so when you look at it, yes, AI and machine learning are hot, or Gen AI, very hot technologies to invest in. The real problem that you see right away, the first thing that pops up is if somebody's going to invest in that technology, the real problem shows up around trusts. And the biggest thing about the whole DLT Hyperledger space is it's not the only part of solving trust problems, but it's a major part. And so if you're really going to get involved in anything as a solution today, that's cloud-based, digital assets, digital transformations, anything you're looking at, data lakes, all of those things, pretty much they all depend on trusted data. And most of the Hyperledger technologies that are open source are very, very key to that. So that's my little quick Jim's biased bad summary on why blockchain and Hyperledger are important. So that's it, John. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jim. And I'm going to now jump back over here and talk to Francis. And Francis, I'm going to kind of consolidate a couple of these questions into one here for you. So basically, my question to you is, how can candidates that have attended this session build their skills and their brand for a blockchain role in your company? And then also, where can they find open and available blockchain roles within your organization? And, you know, in addition to coming to the career fair here, where can they go on your website or, you know, otherwise to reach out? So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Francis.
So we have a careers page on our website that's very easy to navigate to. I can drop the link in as well and in the chat. But it's, I would check back frequently because we do open roles on a really rolling basis. So, you know, at a startup, for example, it, you know, if we sign a big new tender or a big new client, there's going to be roles that open up for that client. So if you go to the site today and you don't see something that quite fits you, honestly, I would come again next month and you will see different roles open up.
Perfect
Most
advice. Yeah.
Are around what we do is decentralized identity and security. So sort of building on what Jim said, we work on a lot of open source blockchain and open source technologies, and then on top of that, build the product that will allow you to have verifiable credentials, decentralized identity, and so understanding that privacy and security is going to be the way that we move forward as a community and as web users and as technology users even the apps you use to communicate with your bank, things like that. Those all need privacy components to them. So when you're looking at how do I find the jobs, how do I show my interest or my skills, really understanding, and John mentioned this earlier, the technology that the company is working on is really important in your applications. The best way is the website. If you reach out to me directly, I'm going to redirect you to apply on the website, because then I can track it all on the back end. You know, all of us, I'm sure Madison uses the tool as well. And otherwise it gets lost in my email, unfortunately. And then I will say this, at the moment, we're only hiring candidates that can legally and are based in the US. If so I just want to put that out there, because it's different to how Madison is recruiting, where they have other geographical locations. We have a few colleagues in Europe, but predominantly everyone else is here all the way across the states. So we will certainly look at your application. We would love to share our resources with you if you're based outside of the states. And if honestly, if you were just like the be all end all candidate, we would figure something out. But as a small company, we're just not set up to operate internationally just yet. And I will drop the links in. I see people
Perfect.
ask.
Okay, great. Madison, I'm going to go over to you and have you kind of do the consolidated question again. You know, how can they build their skills and their brand for blockchain roles within your company? And then how can they find the open and available blockchain roles within your organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. Building skills, I think being a part of the Hyperledger Foundation and, you know, the open source community is a really great way to build your skills. I think also, like we were mentioning, joining those Discords and, you know, finding your way to get on projects and joining webinars is another great way to build your skills and kind of put yourself forward in the community. So lots of great opportunities there to kind of, you know, just get involved, to get to know people, connect with people on LinkedIn that are in the community. I know that was another part of your job pointers on your website and the webpage that you were sharing earlier. Find the roles. Our careers page is a good one. We share all of our like newer roles on LinkedIn every quarter. So there's 4 quarters. So every few months you're getting, you know, our new roles posted there. So definitely give Kaleido a follow on LinkedIn. And then, you know, you can reach out to me. My LinkedIn is flooded with a lot of people, so if you don't get an instant response, definitely try again. It probably just got lost in the sauce of my invitations there. But the website is a for sure way to hear back from me either way. So to Francis's point, definitely use that as a good route as well. I think that answers the majority of the question. We do sponsor for people that are outside of the US. So definitely an international company. So don't let that hesitate, or don't hesitate from applying because our roles say they're based in the US or the UK. We're very open to remote and, you know, depending on the role, more business vocals are able to be more remote roles than our engineering hubs. That's what that looks like.
Yeah, that's perfect, Madison. I appreciate that insight. And the one thing I liked that you said also was this: go ahead and follow Kaleido, follow Indicio on, you know, LinkedIn. And a lot of times, Madison and Francis, you can let me know if this is true, is you might put one of your LinkedIn posts and say, you know, we have new opportunities and roles available for these types of roles, and then be able to, you know, have access to that and knowledge by following the company on LinkedIn, which is always good.
Yeah, our our LinkedIn, as well as where you'll get all the latest white papers, blog posts, pictures of our team, where we are in terms of conferences we visit. And there's also, we also have a page on our website that actually is the full calendar of all the Hyperledger working groups and committees, and which
Right.
ones our team attend or lead or co-lead. So sort of going all the way back to join those committees, show up for those meetings, even if you're just doing listen and learn. If you want to get to know the Indicio team, that is a great place to do it versus just shooting them a LinkedIn message that, like Madison was saying, can get a bit lost. But if you actually go to the groups that they're moderating or participating in themselves, they will get to know you much better in that environment than just a cold outreach environment. I'll drop that link.
Yeah. Perfect advice and perfect. Thanks for popping the link in there. And that's one thing I just want to say at this point too is, both Kaleido and Indicio have really been core contributors to the Hyperledger community. When you talk about projects like Firefly, you talk about projects like Hyperledger Aries, those companies have been primary supporters of both of those projects. And really, that's when you interface with those projects in the Hyperledger community, you're going to have a good connection with the companies working on those, which is going to be Kaleido and Indicio. Okay. So Madison, I'm going to jump back over to you here real quick. And we're going to go for the final, core question here. We're going to go with the panel. And that is, what is the best piece of advice you can offer to the attendees today, both in your organization for applying and across the industry at large for other companies as well? So Madison, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's been kind of the overall theme of a lot of my answers, just being actively involved in the community, getting to know people within the community, connecting with anyone and everyone, having conversations, even if you don't see the perfect role listed on the careers page or the website. It doesn't hurt to, reach out and have a conversation, to share your background, to share your contact information, to do check-ins every so often and see how things are going, to see if a role's opened up, to see how you can be more active, to hear about meetups that the company is going to be attending, where you can meet with more people from the organization. Really my truly best advice there in terms of, getting your foot in the door.
Perfect. Okay, Francis, how about you? What's your best advice for the attendees today, both with your company and the industry at large? And you're on mute, Francis. You're on mute, so you're going to have to hit the mute button. Perfect. No problem.
After this many years of using Zoom, we should, or I should know that. But
I have the same problem, Madison. You're not alone in that situation. So there we go.
So sort of starting from the building blocks of how to get in front of me or in front of anyone like Madison, any recruiter. I think it's really important that you have a good resume. And when I say good, I mean short and sweet. I honestly won't get through a resume that's 4 pages. I've had a career of 20 years and mine is a page and a half. So don't feel like you have to throw everything onto a page. Include things like your Git or your GitHub links if you have projects you want to show. If you're earlier in your career, definitely list not all the classes you've taken, but if you took one class and did one project that you think is really applicable, feel free to list that. You don't have to stress about not having 5 job sections on your resume. So keep it short and simple and get your personality across. Otherwise, honestly, it just won't get read. The big thing that I look for, and I mentioned this earlier with sort of looking at your values and if you'll be a cultural fit, is diversity. So the first thing I look for is, are you from an underrepresented group in technology? Are you from an underrepresented group, particularly maybe within the blockchain area of technology? So we are looking for candidates who whose voice and presence are missing in this work or are underrepresented in this field. That is a big advantage that you have. I think as well, I very much look for that passion and those values, which I mentioned before. And I think that having diverse backgrounds is really exciting for us as well. So for example, we have a woman on our team named Shorsher Howard, which some of you have maybe come across in the Hyperledger communities. She leads a few of them and has spoken at Hyperledger conferences. She, her master's degree was in physics, or not master's, sorry, her undergraduate degree was in physics. She was not a computer scientist degree. She was not a software coding degree, but she was super interested in it. She did a lot of self-teaching. She took a bunch of post university courses, and now I would say she is one of our, if not top performer, and a real presence in the community. We have person on our team who used to work at an aquarium, and now he's a pilot, and he runs our sort of operations for the team. We have someone whose background was, he's a former NFL player. And after his football career ended, he got into startups and tech. So we have people just with all sorts of backgrounds. You do not need to have a very linear path in order to be successful in your career. And certainly when you're earlier in your career, you haven't even had that opportunity yet. So play up the experiences that you've had that may not sound like they are tech experiences. But if you have, you know, done study abroad or the Peace Corps or science competitions or robot building competitions or worked in marine biology or anything that shows that you were passionate about a topic, you went after it, you got experience in it, and then you became passionate about something else and you did some self-learning or self-teaching or boot camp or something like that, and now you want to do this. For Indicio, I don't care where your background was and where you came from. I want to see that you are adaptable, quick learner, you take initiative, you can prove that you can work in a fast pace, but with high quality. Those skill sets, those what used to be when I was coming up in the business world were called soft skills, which is just such a ridiculous term for them because they are more important than what were called hard skills, which are skill-based or your base skills. Those are just as important, if not more important. So play those up and demonstrate to me whether it's a cover letter. Again, with a cover letter, don't make it any more than maybe 3/4 of a page because it won't get read. But if you want to tell me more about yourself, you're not sure how to put that into your resume, include a cover letter or a note. And that just allows me to learn more about you, and I will get so much more interested and so much more excited about your application if I'm like, oh my gosh, they did something totally cool. I definitely want to talk to this person. So you know, don't lean away from that. Lean into that. Take advantage of your past experiences, regardless if they're you know, you feel like they're in the tech field or not. You never know what's going to jump out at us. We may have a client that works in that field, and all of a sudden now we have an expert on our team who knows that industry, even if you're more beginner level, let's say, in the technology, but you know how to speak their language, you may have contacts that are valuable, you know how the business operates, and that is as valuable. So lean into that. show off your diversity, and be proud of that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great advice. And it's also good to hear these real world examples too, Francis. You know, that's always important to the whole mix and everything else. So, you know, great information. Madison, you have something to add there?
No, I completely agree to definitely keep it from being a super lengthy CV. I'm guilty of that and not going fully into something that's 7 pages long. You've lost me at page 4 for sure. So really honing in on the really important details and making sure you're highlighting, the most interesting pieces. If you're early in your career, highlighting the most important classes, I think is a great piece of advice that Francis gave.
Okay, perfect. And Jim, I'm just going to pop over to you. And then what I'd like to do after we have Jim kind of give his best advice, having been in the industry and recruiting and also being recruited, then we're going to set up the breakout rooms. And then what I'd like everyone to do is go in and, once I get these set up, then let's go ahead and go between the 2 rooms, and then you can have more personal one-on-one discussions with either Madison or Francis. So Jim, you want to give your best advice and then we'll go to the breakout rooms?
Sure. I'll just build off of what's already been said by Francis and Madison. Obviously, I think good places to start, just check out their websites and in a sense, understand the process that they have and the kind of roles that they look for. That's a starting point. Other than that, I would say, Hyperledger community overall has a tremendous amount of resources. I won't even bother to go through them here, but I'll just say if I'm trying to understand in a sense what the opportunities are, I've got all of these Hyperledger projects covering different, I'll call it related technologies. You've heard about some of them today. We've got tremendous documentation that's online that actually is pretty easy to understand that. There's free tutorials in many cases you can download yourself and try. That's great. So whether it's Hyperledger Firefly or Besu or Fabric or any of those, they're out there. We have the groups that we talked about, John mentioned earlier, and then those groups, whatever they are, either technology, project-related ones or industry-related, supply chain, finance, public sector, they all have, in a sense, meetings that you can attend for free, and they all have recordings and presentations you can download to understand that stuff. The nice thing is the Hyperledger team, the community support group, they have a Hyperledger channel on YouTube that has just a tremendous history. You can easily search that channel and find any topic you're interested on. And then there's, John's mentioned this and before, but we have some Linux Foundation courses related to, DLT and blockchain as well. And the nice part about those courses is if you don't have the money, fine, you don't have to pay whatever is the fee, $99 to get a certificate. But if you want to just go through the course and audit it yourself, usually those are free to audit, which is actually a pretty powerful thing. So if you're trying to, talk to somebody at Kaleido on a certain thing and you say, well, I really want to build some background, I'd go look at one of the courses, some of the tutorials that are available and that kind of stuff. So that's my summary on sort of how to get started. Thanks, John.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and create the breakout rooms, and we're going to make it where you can choose what room you want to go into. My advice is, since we've got 100 people in the session here, I would want to say, if it looks like there's more than 50 people in the room, you might want to split up between the other rooms so we kind of make it an even distribution, and then go ahead and change around. We'll let this run, we have it scheduled to run through 10:30 Mountain Time today. But if it really looks like we need a little additional discussion, depending on Madison and Francis's schedule, we can let it run a little bit more. And then Jim, do you have any desire to kind of take on another breakout room as well to talk to people just to kind of your
Sure.
background?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
obviously
great.
I'm not representing a single organization at this point, but I'm happy to get dumped into a breakout room for sure and talk to anybody that wants to chat. Thanks.
Just more, I guess what I'd say is if you go into the breakout room that Jim's going to be running, you're just going to be more talking about the industry in general versus a specific recruitment at a company. So let's try that. So I'm creating 3 breakout rooms, and I'm going to rename them here. So let's call this one Kaleido. Okay, and then I'm going to call this one Indicio. And then I'll call this one, I'll say general industry, blockchain industry. Okay, so Madison and Francis, if you can go to the rooms that I set up for your companies, that'd be great. And then Jim, if you can go to the one that's for your general blockchain, then I'm going to open all the rooms now. And then if I need to, I'm just going to kind of float around between all of them, make sure everything's running smooth. Here we go. And please choose one of the three rooms.
Sorry, how did we choose one of the rooms?
You should be able to, if you tell me who your name is, I can assign you to one to start off with.
Oh, okay.
Should be able to look
Actually,
at
I've just
the room.
seen, yeah. I want to go to Indicio. Okay, I'm going to try and join that one. Oh,
Okay,
no.
yeah, and if you have any problems with assign you, tell me your name.
Hello, my name is Antonio Cantal. I would like to join Kaleido.
Okay, I'm putting you into Kaleido right now.
Thank you.
No
Hi,
problem.
John. I'm Pedro Aquino, and I would
Yes.
like to join Indicio, please.
Okay, let me find you here. Sign to Indicio.
How do I join? Okay, leave or what do
And John, just to confirm, I'm going to end the live stream. Is that
That's perfect.
okay? Great.
Please do so. Yeah, we're just,
Jesse,
okay,
going to
I want to join Indicio group.
Jesse, let me find you.